He thought I was just the difficult daughter, but when my stepfather signed off on $128,000 worth of upgrades to Dad's house, I activated the lock he didn't know existed. The legal deadbolt buried deep in the trust documents. Mom let him control the wallet. I let the law hold the keys. The day they ripped out the hand-carved molding my father installed himself, I didn't argue. I triggered the clause everyone forgot about. No contest plus spendthrift. With one click, 3.7 million froze solid. My name is Nora Caldwell, and I learned early that love and legal documents aren't opposites. They're complementary forces. At 32, I run compliance and risk for North Arc Systems, a fintech company where I spend my days building fail-safes into financial systems. But the most important fail-safe I ever helped design was sitting in a filing cabinet in my childhood home in Milford, Oregon, a timber town where Douglas firs outnumber residents 10,000 to 1. Dad built our house with his own hands. A 1920s craftsman, he restored board by board over 20 years. Every morning, he'd run his palm along the original oak molding in the hallway, checking for imperfections only he could feel. "Lock what you treasure," he'd tell me, tightening a loose screw or adjusting a hinge, with process, not emotion. He wasn't just talking about doors. When pancreatic cancer took him last spring, he left everything meticulously organized. The house, now worth $1.2 million, his 40% stake in Caldwell Holdings LLC, all wrapped tight in the Caldwell Family Trust. An independent trustee managed the assets. I served as trust protector, a role Dad insisted on after watching too many families torn apart by grief and greed. "You understand systems, Nora," he'd said from his hospital bed, his contractor's hands still strong despite the morphine drip. "Your mother feels, you think, the family needs both, but the trust needs you." Mom, Elaine, had always been the soft counterpoint to Dad's measured precision. Where he built structures, she built relationships. Where he trusted contracts, she trusted people. It worked beautifully for 35 years, his steadiness anchoring her warmth, her spontaneity brightening his routines. Without him, she drifted. I watched her wander the house those first months, touching things he'd built, sitting in his workshop among the sawdust and silence. The grief counselor at Milford Presbyterian said it was normal. The prescription bottles accumulating on her nightstand said it was manageable. The unopened mail piling up in Dad's study said otherwise. "I can handle the bills, Mom," I offered during one of my weekend visits from Portland, where North Arc's offices overlooked the Willamette. "I'm not helpless," she snapped, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry, honey. I need to do this myself. Your father always—" She stopped, unable to finish sentences that ended with him. I should have pushed harder. Should have noticed the durable power of attorney she'd granted Dad years ago was still active, floating in legal limbo. Should have realized that loneliness makes smart women vulnerable and vulnerable women make dangerous decisions. But I was deep in a risk assessment project for North Arc's expansion into cryptocurrency custody. I was building Byzantine fault tolerance into distributed systems, making sure no single point of failure could bring down millions in digital assets. I was protecting strangers' money with more vigor than I protected my mother's judgment. The house still smelled like sawdust and lemon oil when everything started to change. Dad's workshop tools hung exactly where he'd left them. His pencil marks still marked the growth chart inside the pantry door, not tracking children, but the settling of the foundation he'd reinforced himself. The trust documents sat in their fireproof safe, every clause a small act of love. Spendthrift provisions to protect beneficiaries from themselves, no contest clauses to prevent fighting, dual signature requirements for major decisions. He'd thought of everything. Almost everything. He hadn't anticipated Victor Hale. Victor Hale entered my mother's life through the grief support group at Milford Presbyterian, carrying a box of tissues and a practiced smile. 58 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of casual authority that came from decades of telling people what they wanted to hear. He introduced himself as a facilitator, though nobody quite knew what that meant beyond his ability to steer conversations toward himself. Your mother's found comfort in our meetings, he told me during Thanksgiving dinner, sitting in Dad's chair like it had always belonged to him. Grief shared is grief halved. Mom nodded eagerly, her first genuine smile in months. Victor lost his wife 3 years ago. He understands. He understood plenty. Within weeks, he was helping with the household bills, spreading statements across Dad's study desk with the theatrical concern of a TV doctor reviewing x-rays. Elaine, you're paying too much for utilities. Let me negotiate with the power company. Then, this property tax seems high. Have you considered appealing? And finally, all these documents, it must be overwhelming. I could organize them for you. I watched from my laptop screen during our Sunday video calls as he hovered in the background, always just within earshot, occasionally offering commentary. Your daughter seems very thorough, he'd say, watching me review Mom's expenses remotely. Must be exhausting, managing everything from Portland. I'm not managing everything, I corrected. The trustee handles the trust assets. I just supervise, he finished, his tone suggesting the word tasted sour. Yes, Elaine mentioned the complicated arrangement. Mom shifted uncomfortably. It's not complicated. Victor, Tom set it up to protect. Of course, of course. He patted her shoulder with practiced gentleness, though it does seem like a lot of red tape for a family home. By January, he'd convinced Mom to add him as an authorized user on her personal checking account, just for grocery runs and errands. By February, he was suggesting modernizations to the house. This old wiring is dangerous, Elaine, and these floors, gorgeous. But think about the maintenance. Dad maintained them perfectly for 20 years, I said during my next visit, running my hand along the original Douglas fir planks. Victor's smile never wavered. Your father isn't here anymore, Nora. Someone needs to think practically about your mother's future. The someone, apparently, was him. I started noticing small changes. New thermostats appeared on walls. The vintage doorknobs Dad had salvaged from a demolished Portland hotel were replaced with modern handles. Quotes from contractors left casually on the kitchen counter. Mom dismissed my concerns with increasing irritation. He's trying to help, she insisted. You're so busy with your algorithms and regulations. Victor is here. The word stung precisely because it was true. I was building risk models for million-dollar transactions while missing the risk developing in my childhood home. My phone contained 17 two-factor authentication apps, but couldn't authenticate my mother's judgment from 200 miles away. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing North Ark's disaster recovery protocols. The sender, M. Richardson at Valley Contractors, net. The subject, Caldwell Renovation Plans, Phase 1. CC'd. Victor Hale. Attached were architectural drawings showing our living room gutted. The hand-turned posts Dad had carved, replaced with steel beams. His built-in oak cabinets designated for removal. The estimated cost, $128,000. I called Mom immediately. Did you approve this? Victor says it will increase the value. Did you sign anything? A pause. He's handling the paperwork. My compliance training kicked in like muscle memory. Mom, stop. Don't sign anything else. The house is held in trust. Any major changes need trustee approval and my signature as trust protector. You're overreacting. Victor knows about construction. He managed properties before retirement. What properties? Where? Another pause. I don't interrogate people who are helping me. Nora. That night, I pulled every document I could access remotely. The trust papers were clear. Any modification exceeding $10,000 required dual signatures. The trustee confirmed no one had contacted them, but buried in Mom's recent credit card statements, I found charges for consultation fees to Valley Contractors. Small amounts, $500 here, $750 there, just under the reporting thresholds. Victor Hale wasn't just helping. He was testing the locks. The destruction began on a Thursday while I was locked in a compliance audit at North Ark. My phone buzzed with notifications from Mom's neighbor, photos of contractors carrying out the original oak flooring, workers prying off the crown molding Dad had restored piece by piece, a dumpster filling with a century of craftsmanship. By the time I reached Milford that evening, the living room was gutted. Vinyl planks sat stacked where Dad's workshop had extended into the house. The hand-carved door frame he'd spent 3 months perfecting was propped against the garbage bin like scrap wood. Victor stood in the ruins, directing workers with the casual authority of ownership. "Nora, your mother said you were coming. What do you think? Much brighter without all that old wood, isn't it?" "Where's my mother?" "Resting." The noise was getting to her. He gestured at the devastation. "We'll have this finished by Monday. Modern, efficient, easy to maintain." I pulled out my phone, documenting everything. "You had no authority to do this. Your mother approved everything." He produced a folder with the theatrical timing of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. Signed and dated. The invoice made my stomach turn. $128,000 for complete living space modernization. The payment authorization showed Mom's signature on a check from a joint account I didn't know existed, opened 3 weeks ago at Milford Community Bank. "This is trust property," I said. "Any renovation over $10,000 requires..." "Requires what? Your permission?" Victor's polite mask slipped. "Your mother is a grown woman. She doesn't need her daughter's approval to improve her own home." "It's not her home. It's held in trust." "Details," he waved dismissively. "Legal technicalities designed to keep families apart. Your mother deserves to live comfortably, not preserved in some shrine to your father." He posted photos that night to the church Facebook group. "Helping Elaine modernize her space for a fresh start. #New beginnings, #God's plan." The comments poured in. Praise for Victor's kindness. Heart emojis from congregation members. Suggestions for paint colors. I spent the night on the phone with the trustee, then our family lawyer at Harper & Vale. By morning, I had a stop payment order ready and a letter of instruction for the bank. The branch manager, who'd known Dad for 30 years, looked uncomfortable as she processed it. "Mrs. Caldwell was just here yesterday with Mr. Hale," she said carefully. "They seemed very certain about their plans." "The account requires dual authorization for amounts over $10,000, I reminded her. "Check your signature cards." She did. The trust documentation was clear. The stop payment went through. Victor's reaction was volcanic. He called me from Mom's phone, his voice shaking with rage. "You vindictive little bean counter. You think you can waltz in here and control everything? Your mother is miserable. She wants to move forward, but you're keeping her trapped in the past." "Put my mother on the phone." I heard muffled conversation, then Mom's voice, strained and exhausted. "Nora, please, just let this go. Victor's trying to help." "Mom, he's destroying Dad's work. The house value will..." "I don't care about the value." She was crying now. "I care about living somewhere that doesn't remind me every second that Tom is gone. Victor understands that. Why can't you?" The line went dead. I sat in my rental car outside the house, watching contractors argue with Victor about the stopped payment. One by one, they packed up their tools and left. Victor stood in the doorway, staring at me through the windshield with undisguised hatred. That evening, I discovered the extent of our problem. Mom had signed a limited power of attorney, giving Victor authority to handle household maintenance and improvements. The document was vague enough to be dangerous, specific enough to be legal. Worse, I found the old durable POA she'd granted Dad, never formally revoked after his death, creating a legal gray area Victor could exploit. My phone rang. The trustee. "Nora, we have a situation. Someone's been calling other banks, trying to open accounts against the trust assets. They're claiming to have POA authority." "Freeze everything," I said. "Every account, every asset, now." "That's extreme. Your mother will need access to..." "I'll handle my mother. You protect the trust." I looked at the house. Dad's masterpiece turned into a battlefield. Through the window, I could see Victor gesturing animatedly to Mom, probably spinning stories about her controlling daughter. the one who cared more about money than her mother's happiness. He thought he'd found the perfect mark, a grieving widow with assets and a daughter too busy to notice. He was about to learn what happened when you tried to break into a system designed by Tom Caldwell and protected by his daughter. The memory surfaced as I sat in Harper & Vale's conference room, staring at trust documents spread like tarot cards across the mahogany table. Dad and I had sat in these same chairs 18 months ago, when his diagnosis was fresh and his mind still sharp despite the pain. "I want layers," he'd said, his contractor's hands sketching invisible blueprints in the air. Like a good foundation, multiple barriers against failure. The lawyer, Patricia Harper, had nodded. "The irrevocable subtrust for the house is solid. Spendthrift provisions prevent creditors from touching it. No contest clause stops beneficiary disputes." "Not enough," Dad insisted. "I've seen good families destroyed by bad actors. What if someone targets Elaine? She trusts too easily." That's when we designed the multi-lock system. First lock. The house itself sat in an irrevocable subtrust, with spendthrift and no contest clauses. Any beneficiary who challenged the trust terms would forfeit their inheritance instantly. Second lock. Dual signature requirements for any modification exceeding $10,000. The independent trustee held one key. I held the other as trust protector. Third lock. The one Dad called our nuclear option. As trust protector, I had emergency freeze authority if I documented waste, legal speak for destroying or devaluing trust property. I could lock down all trust assets pending investigation. "When do I use it?" I'd asked. Dad's eyes had been serious. "When someone tries to break the other locks, document everything, photos, receipts, correspondence, build your case like you're going to court, because you might be." Fourth lock. The clawback provision. Any unauthorized spending that diminished the trust's value could be recovered from the responsible party, with interest and penalties. "Seems harsh," Patricia had observed. "Harsh protects the family," Dad replied. "Soft invites predators." Now, sitting in the same room without him, I activated every lock he'd built. The notice of waste and emergency freeze was a masterpiece of legal precision. Patricia helped me draft it while her paralegal organized exhibits, before and after photos of the destroyed living room, the original craftsman appraisal showing $340,000 in historical value, the contractor's invoice for vinyl flooring and particle board replacements. "This is devastating," Patricia said, comparing photos. He removed character-defining features of a documented historic craftsman home. Any real estate attorney would call this waste. We sent the notice simultaneously to 5 recipients: Milford Community Bank, the County Recorder's Office, Valley Contractors, the independent trustee, and Victor Hale himself. The effect was immediate. The $3.7 million in trust assets, Mom's security, my inheritance, the capital in Caldwell Holdings, froze solid. Every account, every investment, every property title locked pending investigation. The only funds flowing were Mom's monthly allowance, which came from a separate maintenance account I controlled as trust protector. Victor discovered the freeze when his contractor called screaming about bounced checks. Then the material suppliers called, then the subcontractors. Within 4 hours. Mom's phone was ringing nonstop with angry vendors demanding payment for work Victor had authorized. He tried to play it cool when he called me. "Nora, there's been some misunderstanding with the banks. Your mother is embarrassed. The contractors are threatening liens. They can threaten whatever they want. The trust isn't paying for unauthorized destruction of trust property. You're calling improvements destruction? That's dramatic, even for you." "I'm calling it what the historic preservation assessor will call it in court. You removed original growth Douglas fir flooring and hand-carved architectural elements from a 1920s craftsman home. The value loss is documented at $140,000 and climbing." Silence, then. "You had the house assessed?" "Tuesday, while you were posting Facebook photos of your vandalism." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You calculating little bitch. You planned this." "No, Victor, my father planned this. I'm just executing the plan. I heard Mom in the background. What's happening? Why is everyone calling? Your daughter happened, Victor spat. She's destroyed our renovation, humiliated you in front of the entire community, and frozen your own money out of spite. That's not, I started, but he'd hung up. Within an hour, Mom called from her friend Margaret's phone, sobbing. How could you do this? Everyone knows. The whole church knows. Victor says we might lose the house because of liens. Mom, listen carefully. The house can't be liened. It's in an irrevocable trust. The contractors can sue Victor personally since he signed the contracts without authority, and the money isn't frozen forever, just until we resolve this. Resolve what? You've made me a pariah. No, Mom, I've made you protected. There's a difference. She hung up on me too. That night, I compiled everything. 18 months of trust documents, 3 weeks of Victor's financial manipulation, 4 days of destruction, and one perfectly executed emergency freeze. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. Lock what you treasure, with process, not emotion. The process was working. The locks were holding. Victor Hale had just discovered he wasn't breaking into a house. He was breaking into a fortress. The intervention was staged on Mom's front porch on a Sunday afternoon, timed for maximum visibility. Victor had assembled his cast carefully. Pastor Williams, 3 church elders, Mom's book club, even my Aunt Diane who'd driven up from Sacramento. They sat in a semicircle of folding chairs like a tribunal of concern, blocking the entrance to the house. Nora, we're here because we love you, Pastor Williams began, his voice carrying the practiced compassion of someone who'd mistaken manipulation for ministry. Your mother is suffering, and your financial aggression is making things worse. I stood at the bottom of the porch steps, phone recording in my pocket, taking photos with another. Victor had positioned himself behind Mom's chair, hands protective on her shoulders, playing the devoted partner defending his vulnerable woman. She's grieving, Diane added, tearfully. Tom wouldn't want you controlling everything like this. Interesting, I said, maintaining compliance officer calm. Which part would Dad object to? Protecting his life's work from demolition? Or preventing Mom from being financially exploited? Exploited? Victor's voice cracked with manufactured outrage. I've spent thousands of my own money helping Elaine modernize that mausoleum you insist on preserving. Thousands of your money? Would you like to document that claim for the forensic accountant? His jaw tightened. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret from book club leaned forward. Sweetheart, we understand you're trying to help, but freezing your mother's accounts? That's elder abuse. I pulled out my tablet, swiping to the trust documents. Actually, Margaret, elder abuse would be isolating a vulnerable widow, manipulating her into unauthorized financial transactions, and destroying $140,000 worth of her primary asset. Would you like to see the historic assessor's report? Nobody wants to see your paperwork, Victor snapped. This isn't about money. Then you won't mind returning the $128,000 you tried to extract from the trust? The porch went silent. Even the neighbors pretending to garden stopped to listen. Pastor Williams cleared his throat. Perhaps we should pray. Perhaps you should read this. I handed him a folder. That's the shell company registration for Valley Contractors. Notice the managing member? Victor Hale. Registered 3 weeks ago. The same Victor Hale who convinced my mother to authorize payments to his own company for destroying irreplaceable historical architecture. Victor's mask finally cracked completely. You vindictive little... He caught himself, remembering the audience. This is harassment. Slander. I'll sue. Please do. Discovery will be fascinating. I turned to Mom, who was crying silently into a handkerchief. Mom, I'm not trying to hurt you, but Dad and I built these protections specifically for this situation. You have 2 choices. Work with me to revoke Victor's POA and accept a housing stipend from the trust while we sort this out, or continue letting him drag you into legal liability for waste and conversion of trust assets. Don't threaten your mother, Diane gasped. I'm not threatening. I'm explaining consequences. The trustee is already preparing a surcharge action. The State Contractor Board has opened an investigation into Valley contractors for operating without proper licenses. The only reason Mom isn't named in these proceedings is because I'm protecting her as trust protector. Victor stood abruptly. Elaine, we're leaving. You don't have to listen to this. Mom stood shakily, but I played my last card. Before you go, Mom, you should know that the $47,000 in your joint account with Victor, the one he opened using the durable POA you gave Dad, that's being investigated for fraud. The POA died with Dad. Every transaction Victor made using it is potentially criminal. Mom froze. What? Ask him why he needed you to sign a new limited POA if he thought Dad's old one was valid. Ask him why he opened accounts in banks where Dad never did business. Ask him. The porch audience turned to Victor like a Greek chorus discovering the villain. He grabbed Mom's arm. We're leaving. Now. Let go of my mother. Or what? You'll file another report? I smiled. Cold as January frost. No, I'll file a temporary restraining order for financial elder abuse with emergency ex parte relief. I have 17 witnesses to you physically controlling a vulnerable adult while under investigation for financial crimes. Would you like to add criminal charges to your civil problems? He released her arm. Mom stood between us, swaying like a tree in conflicting winds. I just wanted to be happy again, she whispered. I know, Mom, but happy and safe aren't mutually exclusive. Dad made sure of that. The intervention dissolved into murmurs and side glances. Victor retreated into the house. Our house, Dad's house, slamming the door. The sound echoed like a judge's gavel. I stood alone on the walkway Dad had laid stone by stone, phone still recording, photos time-stamped and uploaded to the cloud, evidence, process, locks. Tomorrow, I'd file the TRO. Tonight, I'd review the forensic accountant's preliminary report showing Victor's vendor fraud. The war wasn't over, but I'd won this battle. Lock what you treasure, I whispered to the empty porch. Even when what you treasure doesn't want to be locked. The war room took shape in Patricia Harper's conference room. By Monday morning, we had assembled our team. Patricia as trust attorney, Robert Chen from Fiduciary Services as the independent trustee, Maria Santos, our forensic accountant, and James Whitfield, the historic preservation specialist who'd appraised the damage. This is remarkable, Maria said, spreading vendor invoices across the table. He billed $128,000 for work, worth maybe $30,000. The markup is criminal. Literally, this crosses into fraud territory. Robert nodded, reviewing his trustee records. No one contacted me about renovations. First I heard was Nora's emergency freeze notice. As trustee, I would have never approved destroying historical elements. James pulled up his laptop, showing before and after photos. The original crown molding alone was worth $15,000. Hand-carved, old-growth timber, impossible to replicate. He replaced it with $200 worth of MDF from Home Depot. The flooring, original 1920s vertical grain Douglas fir, valued at $45 per square foot, replaced with luxury vinyl plank at $3 per square foot. Total value destruction? Patricia asked, taking notes. Conservative estimate, $140,000. Could go higher if we factor in the loss of historical designation eligibility. I added my evidence to the pile. Emails, text messages, Facebook posts, recorded conversations. Here's the timeline. January 15th. Victor gains access to Mom's checking. February 2nd. Opens joint account. February 8th. Registers Valley contractors. February 10th. Starts demolition without permits. Without permits? Patricia's eyes sharpened. That's a code violation. 6 violations. Actually. I slid over the building department report. No demolition permit, no construction permit, no electrical permit for the thermostat installation, no review for historical property modifications, no licensed contractor on site, and no workers' comp insurance for the laborers. Maria whistled low. He's exposed on every front. Good. Here's our offer of cure. Patricia distributed copies of the document we'd crafted. Offer of cure and settlement. To Victor Hale. You have 14 days to 1. Reimburse the trust $128,000 for unauthorized modifications. 2. Pay $140,000 in damages for destroyed historical elements. 3. Sign a stipulated judgment agreeing to no contest of trust terms. Vacate the premises within 14 days. Return all keys, documents, and property belonging to Elaine Caldwell. 6. Cease all contact with trust beneficiaries. In exchange, the trust will 1. Not pursue criminal fraud charges. 2. Release claims for additional damages. 3. Seal all investigation records. Failure to accept means 1. Immediate eviction proceedings. 2. Criminal referral to the DA. 3. Civil suit for fraud, conversion, and elder abuse. 4. Personal liability for all costs and fees. Think he'll take it? Robert asked. No, I said. He's too invested, emotionally and financially. He'll fight. Patricia smiled grimly. Then we prepare for hearing. I'll file the petition to enforce trust terms and surcharge for waste. Nora, as trust protector, you'll testify to the freeze rationale. I spent the next 3 days building exhibits. A photo timeline showing the destruction hour by hour, a spreadsheet tracking every unauthorized expense, affidavits from 3 contractors confirming Victor had no experience in construction. The pile grew into a mountain of evidence. Mom called only once, through Margaret's phone again. Her voice sounded hollow, defeated. Victor says you're trying to make him homeless. He doesn't live there, Mom. It's not his home. He's been staying here since the renovation started. Without lease or rental agreement, he's a guest. At best, more accurately, he's a squatter. Nora, she sighed. What do you want me to do? Revoke his POA. Today, Patricia has the documents ready. Sign them, and I'll release your monthly stipend immediately. Keep Victor, and you're on your own financially until this resolves. That's blackmail. No, Mom. Blackmail would be threatening to release the recording of Victor calling you pathetic when he thought you were asleep. This is consequence management. Silence, then. You recorded that? I record everything now. Dad taught me to document. Victor taught me to weaponize it. She hung up, but 2 hours later, Patricia called. Your mother just signed the POA revocation, witnessed and notarized. She's also asking about the housing stipend you mentioned. $4,000 monthly, direct deposit, from the trust maintenance account, enough for a nice apartment while we restore the house. She wants to know if she can stay in the house instead. I considered. Only if Victor leaves, non-negotiable. That evening, I sent Victor the hearing notice and our offer of cure via certified mail, email, and process server. The server found him at the house, bags packed, Mom crying in the doorway. 14 days, the server announced, handing him the papers. Victor read them in the porch light, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally, cold calculation. He looked at me standing by my rental car. You think you've won? He called out. I think I've protected what my father built, I replied. What happens next is your choice. He crumpled the papers. I'll see you in court. I smiled, pulling out my phone to photograph him holding the crushed documents. Looking forward to it. That's acceptance of service. By the way, thank you for the evidence. The locks were holding. The case was built. In 14 days, we'd find out if Dad's fortress could withstand its first real siege. The Milford County Courthouse hadn't seen drama like this since the timber wars of the 1980s. Word had spread through town. The showdown between Tom Caldwell's daughter and Elaine's new man. The gallery filled with curious neighbors, church members, and contractors still owed money. Judge Harrison, 70 and sharp as winter wind, reviewed the mountain of evidence we'd submitted. Victor sat at the defendant's table with a budget attorney who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mom sat behind me, having chosen my side at the last minute when Victor refused to leave the house voluntarily. This is a petition to enforce trust terms and surcharge for waste, Judge Harrison began. Ms. Harper, proceed. Patricia stood, immaculate in navy blue. Your Honor, will demonstrate that Mr. Hale deliberately destroyed $140,000 in historical property value while attempting to extract $128,000 from the Caldwell Family Trust through fraudulent billing. She walked through our evidence methodically. The before photos showed Dad's craftsmanship in golden afternoon light. The after photos looked like a big box store explosion. James Whitfield testified about the irreplaceable nature of old-growth timber and hand-carved elements. Maria Santos presented her forensic accounting, showing Victor's shell company marking up materials by 400%. Then came my testimony. Ms. Caldwell, Patricia began, as trust protector, why did you initiate an emergency freeze? The trust defines waste as any action that significantly diminishes property value. Mr. Hale's destruction of historical elements constituted clear waste. The freeze was mandatory, not discretionary. The defense claims you acted from personal animosity. I acted from fiduciary duty. My feelings about Mr. Hale are irrelevant. The trust documents are clear. Victor's attorney, Mr. Brennan, cross-examined half-heartedly. Ms. Caldwell, isn't it true you resented Mr. Hale's relationship with your mother? I resented his destruction of my father's work and his financial manipulation. His relationship with my mother was concerning only insofar as it facilitated those actions. You claim Mr. Hale had no authority, but didn't Mrs. Caldwell give him power of attorney? I pulled out the documents. She signed a limited POA for household maintenance under duress and misrepresentation. Moreover, the trust supersedes any POA. Page 12, Section 4. No power of attorney, whether durable, springing, or limited, shall override the dual signature requirement for trust property modifications exceeding $10,000. Judge Harrison looked up. Mr. Hale, do you wish to testify? Victor took the stand like a man walking to his execution. His story unraveled immediately. You claim sweat equity in the property? Patricia asked. I invested time and money improving Elaine's home. The home is trust property, not Elaine's personal asset. Were you aware of this? Elaine said it was hers. Patricia presented an email. This is your message to Valley contractors stating, quote, the trust stuff is just paperwork. We'll handle the daughter later. You knew about the trust. Victor's face reddened. I was trying to help. By billing $128,000 for $30,000 in work through your shell company? That's a lie. Maria Santos took the stand next, showing invoices, bank records, and the shell company registration. The numbers were damning. Victor had even billed for consultation fees on days he was photographed at the casino. Judge Harrison had heard enough. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom fell silent. The Caldwell Family Trust is valid and enforceable. The spendthrift and no contest clauses are binding. Ms. Caldwell acted properly as trust protector in freezing assets upon discovering waste. He turned to Victor. Mr. Hale, you knowingly destroyed historical property value while attempting to extract funds through fraudulent billing. The evidence is overwhelming. Therefore, I order, Mr. Hale is surcharged $140,000 for waste, plus $128,000 in restitution for fraudulent billing. An injunction is issued preventing any contact with trust property or beneficiaries. Mr. Hale will vacate the premises within 72 hours or face arrest for trespass. Victor shot to his feet. This is robbery. I improved that house. You destroyed it, Judge Harrison said coldly, and you did so while defrauding an elderly widow. Consider yourself fortunate, Ms. Caldwell chose civil court over criminal charges. Bailiff, we're done here. Outside the courthouse, I stood with Mom while Patricia handled reporters. Victor emerged with his attorney, saw us, and started over. The bailiff stepped between us. 72 hours, I reminded him. The locksmith will be there at hour 73. He leaned around the bailiff. Your father would be ashamed of you. I pulled out my phone, found the voice memo from 2 years ago. Dad in his workshop, teaching me about restoration. His voice filled the courthouse steps. Protecting what we've built isn't cruel. Nora, it's love in its most practical form. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no to those who would tear down what others spent lifetimes creating. Victor's face went pale. He turned and walked away, defeated. Mom squeezed my hand. How many recordings do you have? Every conversation with Victor, most with you, all backed up in triple redundancy. Your father taught you well. He taught me to lock what I treasure, with process, not emotion. The locksmith was already waiting at the house, tools ready. In 3 days, Victor would be gone. The restoration could begin. The fortress had held. The house stood empty except for ghosts and sawdust. I walked through the gutted living room, my footsteps echoing on the exposed subfloor where Dad's carefully maintained Douglas fir once gleamed. The afternoon light streamed through windows now stripped of their original frames, casting harsh shadows where warm wood tones used to glow. I bent down and picked up a piece of the original crown molding that had somehow escaped the dumpster, 8 inches of hand-carved perfection, each groove a testament to patience I'd never possess. Dad would have spent hours on just this fragment. Victor had ripped it down in minutes. My phone buzzed. The bank confirming Victor's accounts had been frozen for the clawback. $268,000 would return to the trust within 10 business days. The state contractor board had revoked Valley Contractors' registration. 3 separate elderly widows had come forward with similar stories after reading about our case in the Milford Gazette. I set the salvaged molding piece carefully on the empty mantel, a promise of what would be restored. The restoration crew waited outside, trucks loaded with reclaimed Douglas fir from a demolished 1920s Portland hotel, vintage millwork from architectural salvage yards, and a master craftsman who'd studied under Dad 20 years ago. They stood respectfully at the property line, understanding this moment needed space. "Begin with the crown molding," I called out, my voice steady despite the tightness in my throat. "The rest comes after." The foreman nodded, signaling his team. They moved in with the reverence of pallbearers, carrying in pieces of history to replace what had been destroyed. Mom appeared in the doorway, holding a banker's box. "I found these in the garage. Victor missed them." Inside were Dad's original blueprints for the restoration, his handwritten notes in the margins. Nora helped measure this section, age 7. "Use this pattern for the dining room, Elaine's favorite. Save this detail for last. The reveal matters." "Your housing stipend is set up," I told her, keeping my voice professional. $4,000 a month, directly deposited. You can stay anywhere you want while we restore the house." "I want to stay here," she said quietly. "Watch it come back." "It won't be exactly the same." "No," she agreed. "But it will be protected. That's what Tom wanted. What you both built. The trust, the locks, the process. I didn't understand until I saw you use them." I pulled out my phone, showing her the restoration schedule. 6 months to bring it back to historical standards. Every invoice runs through the trustee and me. Every change documented and approved. "Like your father would have done. Like the trust requires." She handed me an envelope. "From Victor. His attorney delivered it an hour ago." Inside was a cashier's check for the full surcharge amount and a signed agreement never to contest the trust terms. No apology, no explanation, just surrender documented in legal terms. "He's gone?" I asked. "Left town this morning. Margaret heard he's heading to Arizona. Some widow he met online." I should have felt vindication, but all I felt was tired. "I need to call Patricia. Confirm receipt of the funds." Mom stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Nora, I need to say something. I was weak. I let loneliness make me foolish. But you were strong. You protected what your father built. Even when I fought you. Especially when I fought you." "I protected what we built," I corrected. "The trust only works because you're in it too. Your signature still matters. Your choices still count. They just can't destroy what Dad left behind." She nodded, tears finally coming. "He'd be proud of you. He'd be proud of the process," I said. pulling up the restoration contractor's number. The process held. Mom walked back to her car, leaving me alone with the skeleton of our family home. But skeletons could be rebuilt. Bones could be restored. The foundation Dad had poured, both in concrete and in legal documents, remained solid. I texted the foreman. Start with the entry. Dad always said first impressions set expectations. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the trust documents, and began writing the restoration protocols. Each step would be documented, approved, verified. No shortcuts, no compromises, no unlocked doors. Victor thought he'd found an easy mark in a grieving widow and her distant daughter. Instead, he'd walked into a trap 2 generations in the making, a father's foresight and a daughter's execution. I picked up the salvaged piece of molding once more, running my fingers along the grooves Dad had carved. Lock what you treasure, I whispered to the empty room. With process, not emotion. The locks had held. The treasure remained. The rebuilding could finally start. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're hearing this from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in my situation?